أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا نبينا خاتم المرسلين أبو القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد أما بعد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إن الحسين مصباح الهدى وسفينة النجاة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Allah says in the Holy Quran, Allazina amanu wa amilu salihati sayaj'alu lahumur rahmanu udda. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, my dear viewers. You're watching Wilayat TV, and this is the Muharram program that you're watching. And I have the honor to share some of my thoughts with you this morning. So inshallah, let's get started. The ayat I recited is Surah Maryam, verse number 96. And this has been the subject of our conversation. And inshallah, we'll continue our discussions on this subject. It's a very beautiful ayat in the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that for the iman in our hearts and for the good deeds that we have, Allah is going to appoint love in our hearts. Love, which is so very important, so very powerful, the most powerful force on this earth, most powerful force on this earth is love. The love that Allah is going to appoint for us, of course, is at that higher level. We talk about love for each other, love for our relatives, love for humanity as a whole, love for the ummah of Rasulullah, because Rasulullah meant for this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala meant for this ummah to be one ummah, and we can all join under the banner of Imam Mazlum, Imam Hussain, because these are the days that we remember him. And his banner is for everyone. The flag of Imam Hussain is for everyone. Everyone can carry that flag and be proud to be a part of the caravan of Imam Hussain. So the love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to appoint in our hearts is the love for everything, because everything originates from the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who in this ayat, we talked about this in the previous sessions, that Allah is calling himself Ar-Rahman. He's saying Ar-Rahman is going to appoint love for you. And Ar-Rahman, we know how much Allah loves us. And I will talk about that. I'll give you some examples. But today's session, inshallah, we want to dedicate it to the love of Mawla Ali in our hearts. That's my intention today, inshallah. We will talk about that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us. He likes to be called with that name, Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman means someone who is the most loving, the most kind, the most compassionate, somebody who nourishes us, somebody who protects us, and somebody who has so much love for us. So first we'll start with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how much he loves us. That Allah, there's a beautiful hadith, a beautiful narration of the days of Prophet Moses. There was a man, and this man was not a very nice man. And this man was, excuse me, there's a sound of hammer going on. We are getting our roof changed, and the roof people are right above my head, changing the roof of our house. So I apologize for the sound that you hear, the loud hammer sound that you hear. I apologize for that. And let's focus and see what we can do with this is rahmat. When we talk about the Holy Al-Ibad, when we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is rahmat on our heads, and that engulfs us. So inshallah, we will focus more on my words than on the sound that is interfering with my conversation with you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us so much. The story of the days of Prophet Moses, there was a man, and he was tired of taking care of his mother. His mother was old. He was tired of taking care of his mother, not a nice man. And he decided to leave his mother on top of a mountain and just leave her and let her die. So he carries his mother on his shoulders to the mountain, and he puts her on the mountain. and then he goes back home. And this mother, she knows what this man wants to do to her son, but yet, and it's getting dark now. It's getting dark. The sky has become dark. The sun is going away, sinking in the horizon. And she raises her hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and she says, "Oh Allah, my son is going in this place which is like full of rocks. He's like going to cross this mountain to go back home. Please protect him. Protect him from any calamity because he's walking back home." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he listens to her prayer. This cursed man goes back home safely, but then he tells Moses, "Oh Moses, go to this woman who is by herself on the mountain and bring her back to safety." And then as Moses is carrying this lady back, bringing her back to give her some shelter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Moses, "Oh Moses, do you know that this mother, in spite of the son going and dropping her on the mountain, in spite of all of that, knowing that he wanted to cause her harm, this man still is praying for her son." How much love she has in her heart for her son. My love for my servants is way more than that. So you can imagine how much love Allah has for us, that even if we ignore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if we do not do the worship we need to do, his rahmat, that word rahman actually is for believers and non-believers and people that don't even want to think about the concept of Allah, don't even want to think of a God. It engulfs all of us, engulfs the whole creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the other story is also like really beautiful. It is from the life of Prophet Yaqub. When Prophet Yusuf was separated from him, Prophet Yaqub would cry so much. He would cry so much that he became blind and he lost his eyesight. He could not, like see anymore. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then revealed that my love for my creation is more than the love that Yaqub has for Yusuf. So this is how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us. And what he wants to do with that rahmat that is engulfing us is he wants us to be a channel of that rahmat that we pass on to others around us. He wants all of us to be enshrouded in this rahmat, this blessing, this beautiful love that Allah has for us. He wants us to share it, wants us to be the channel that we share this love with each other, love with our relatives, love with our friends, love with our near and dear ones, love with the followers of the Holy Alibet, love with the Ummah of Rasulullah, and love for humanity and the creations of Allah as a whole. He wants us to be the channels to pass on that love. But the love that Allah has appointed for us is a treasure. It's a love that makes us transform from somebody who is ordinary to someone who's extraordinary, makes us do things that normally we would not do. And it's only because of the obedience of Allah and the love that we have in our hearts for the Holy Alibad that we keep on that straight path. It makes us stay on that straight path. And it's because of love and not for anything else. Not the thought of getting paradise as our Maula Ali, and we are going to talk about the love for Maula Ali in a second. As Maula Ali says that, "Oh Allah, I worship you not because I am greedy for paradise or because I'm scared. I fear you like the fear of a slave. It is because I think that you are worthy of my worship. This is the worship of a free man, and this is what we do as followers of the Holy Alibad." So Allah has put this treasure in our hearts, and this is the love that is for pure and virtuous people that Allah has put in our hearts. And He is the one who creates a longing in our hearts to be like them, so that our character then becomes refined just like their character. Allah is the one that creates beauty and harmony, and then He's the one that brings all of us together under that umbrella of love. So my dear friends, the love for Maula Ali is in our hearts. And most of the things I'm going to talk about today for the love of Maula Ali, it is taken from a beautiful book by Shahid Mutahiri. You must have seen that book. It is about polarization around Ali ibn Abi Talib. Shaykh Mutahiri is one of the greatest scholars, and he is a great intellectual scholar, a genius, I should say. And he's written that really, really beautiful book, and it's a book about love. Love that we are talking about. I have a copy of that book, but I don't see it now with me. But I went on the internet and alislam.org, if you go there and you type, just type polarization around the name or polarization around Ali ibn Abi Talib, and you will find this book. Or type Shaheed Mutahiri. He has so many beautiful books that we can all read and share this love that he's talking about. So Shaheed Mutahiri talks about love that Allah has put in our hearts, and he actually quotes this verse that I am talking about in these discussions, that Allah has appointed this love, and it's the love for the Holy Alibad, because a love for somebody who is so pure and perfect, it is indeed a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Shaheed Mutahiri in this book, he talks about why is it that we love Maula Ali so much. We know people in our community, we know people in our families that are just crazy about Maula Ali. You talk about Maula Ali and it brings tears to their eyes, and then they start just feeling that love and that joy, that peace in their heart, just from the remembrance of Maula Ali. So Shaheed Mutahiri says, is it his generosity that makes us love him? Is it his perfection, his wisdom, courage, chivalry, hospitality, modesty, courtesy, kindness, mercy? Is it protection of the weak? Is it his feeling of justice for everyone? Is it his liberty, love for freedom? Is it respect for humanity, generosity, bravery, magnanimity, mercy towards his enemies? Who can explain why we have this love for Maula Ali? And of course, we know he has all of these qualities and many more. But it really is that he is connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has that rahmat, that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we, because of that connection, that divine connection, Allah has put that in our hearts, that when he created us, he made sure that we are attracted to somebody who's pure, somebody who is divine. He has put that in our hearts, that automatically, unless, like something else, some other greed or evil thing interferes with what Allah has created in our minds, when he created us, he put that love for something that is good, something that is away from evil, something that's away from impurity. He has created us so that we automatically fall in love with somebody like Maula Ali. So it is the greatest gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he has put this love for Maula Ali in our hearts. And we are born in households where there is azadari, so it's like a double gift. It's like more and more treasure that is for us. But there's beautiful narrations about the love for Maula Ali through the ages. And I'm going to share two stories here. And both of these are in this book that I'm sharing with you, Shaheed Mutahiri's book. The first one is from this person. His name was, just give me a minute. I'm going to look it up. I wrote it down so I don't forget. Ibn al-Sikit. So Ibn al-Sikit was a very famous Arabic literature scholar. And he was, during the days of al-Mutawakkil, he was a very learned scholar, very well known in society even today. That literature, Arabic literature, is there from him. And al-Mutawakkil, if we want to know, he was an Abbasid Caliph, a tyrant, a person that created terror in the hearts of people. And he was the enemy of Maula Ali. He was the enemy of the Holy Alibad. He had so much enmity in his heart that people that were the followers of Maula Ali, they were killed. And it is said that the streets of that town where he was, it was filled with blood of the Sayyids, the Shia Sayyids. And then it is also written that he made buildings mixed with the blood of Sayyids, Shia Sayyids. So he was a tyrant, well-known tyrant. But he hired Al-Sikit because he wanted to employ somebody famous to teach his two children. So he had two boys, and Al-Sikit, because he was so well known, and Mutawakkil wanted to show people, I'm hiring this really big Arabic scholar. He knew Al-Sikit was somebody who was a lover of Maula Ali. But it didn't matter because he wanted to show, I am hiring the best for my children. So Al-Sikit, Ibn al-Sikit, he did his job teaching the two kids. And finally, when he was done teaching them, one day he wanted to give them a test. He wanted to give them an exam. So Al-Mutawakkil invited a whole bunch of people in his court, and Al-Sikit gave him the test, and they passed it with flying colors. Everyone was so very impressed, and Al-Sikit himself was very impressed. And the Al-Mutawakkil saw all of this, and he thought this is a good chance for me to see what Al-Sikit is going to say. And of course, the education of his children was done, and he thought this is a good time for me to get rid of him. We don't really know what thoughts were crossing this evil person's brain at that time, but he said, Al-Sikit, tell me, do you find my two sons dearer to you than Hasnan? And Al-Sikit was totally amazed at this question that this man, he thought, how proud has this man become that he's comparing his two sons to Hasnan? How has he come to this place? He started blaming himself that why did I ever agree to teach his kids? I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have come to his house. And I did that. But he wanted to reply. And of course, the followers of Maula Ali never have any fear in their hearts. There is nothing in their hearts that is even close to fear. And when we speak, we always speak the truth. And he says, to me, your two sons are, they are not dearer to me at all. And I find them to be less than the slave of Ali, Khambar. To us, Khambar, like Hazrat Khambar, we are ready to take his shoes and put it on our heads. But to Mutawakkil, when he said less than Khambar, he was very offended. And Ibn al-Sikit knew that Mutawakkil is going to be offended, but he had to speak the truth. That why are you comparing somebody like your sons to Hasnan? What is the comparison here? And he said to me, they are way less than even Khambar, who's a slave of Ali. When he heard that, he ordered his tongue to be pulled out and cut. And of course, he had him killed. So that's the love that people have for Maula Ali. There's another beautiful story in the same book, and it is about Ibn al-Kawwa, which is kind of like funny, the name itself, because we know Kawwa is a crow, but al-Kawwa was a Kharji. He was like Ibn Muljim, who killed Maula Ali, the same group. And he would try to incite hatred for Maula Ali in people's hearts. And he would go around saying bad things about Maula Ali, trying to get people to the other camp and away from Maula Ali. And one day he sees there was a friend of Maula Ali who had committed a robbery, and he was very ashamed of it. He repented. He went to Maula Ali and he said, oh Maula, I committed this crime. And Maula said, I have to cut your fingers. And so he cut his fingers, and the friend of Maula Ali is stepping out of the house now, holding his hand, dripping in blood. And Al-Kawwa is lingering around, trying to incite hatred for Maula Ali. So he sees him and he says, who did this to you? What happened? And he knows fully well who could have done it, but he just wants to incite this hatred. And he says, who did this to you? And then the friend of Maula Ali says, you want to know who did this to me? It is Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Asadullah al-Ghalib, Ghalibi ala kulli Ghalib, the one who is Ainullah, the one who is Yadullah, the one who is Wajhullah. He's the one. And as he was mentioning Maula Ali's names and praising him, Ibn al-Kawwa says, you are praising somebody who cut your hand. Do you still love him? And he says, yes, I love him more now, because when he touched me, he is mixed in with my flesh and blood. And that blood is roaming around in my veins now. My love for him has multiplied. So we can see the love that even if somebody is hurt by that sword of Maula Ali, somebody who loves him, who has that love that Allah has put in their hearts because of their iman and good deeds, that love is never going to go away. And there is a famous hadith by Maula Ali himself when he tells the Prophet, "O Prophet, that if somebody loves me and I put a sword on their nose and I'm about to kill them, they are still going to love me. If Allah has put that love in their hearts, they are still going to love me. But somebody who hates me, who has hatred for me, even if I give them the wealth of the whole world, they are not going to love me." And of course, our Prophet has said that love for Ali is Iman, and hatred for Ali is hypocrisy. So that there is a clear differentiation here. And it was the Prophet himself who called us the Shias of Ali, because there's another famous hadith by the Prophet where the Prophet says, Aliyun wa Shiyatuhu humul faizun, that Ali and his party will be the triumphant ones. And the Prophet made the statement. So he started calling us the Shias of Ali. And mashallah, we are all Shias of Maula Ali. But this love that we have in our hearts, and I noticed that it's almost the end of my time, but inshallah I'll possibly talk for 5 more minutes. That the love that Allah has put in our hearts, we have that love for Imam Hussein, and these are the days when we grieve for Imam Hussein. And I have to say that it's every age had Hussein in it, every age had Yazid in it. Starting with, we look at the life of Prophet Ibrahim, for example, when he walked and he stood firm on his path, when he was there and he said, nobody is going to make me move from my path. He was following the footsteps of Imam Hussein. That was Husseiniyyat. And when he was going against Namrud, Namrud was the Yazid of that time. And then we take a look at Moses, Hazrat Musa, that Musa followed the footsteps of Imam Hussein when he stayed true to his path. He stayed on that straight path, and he was facing the Yazid of his time, who is Fir'aun. So every age, we can give examples of every age had Husseiniyyat and every age had Yazidiyat. And we know that today also we are in the same situation, that we face evil every day. We have a choice of different paths every day. And it is that love for Imam Hussein, it is that Husseiniyyat in our hearts, that kindness, compassion, the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts, that Allah has guided our footsteps and we stay on that straight path. Because as we know, kullu yawmin ashura, kullu ardin Karbala, that every day is Ashura and every land is Karbala. Today we remember Hazrat Ali Akbar, who is the 18-year-old son of Imam Hussein. And there's a narration that when Imam Hussein reached Karbala, he asked that question, "Oh father, are we on the straight path?" And Imam Hussein replied, "Of course, my son, we are on the straight path." Then he says, "It does not matter then, father, if death comes and meets us, or we go and meet death. What does it matter?" So that is a famous narration by Ali Akbar alayhi salam. And we see that on that day of Ashura, the day started with the azan of Ali Akbar that reverberated through the land of Karbala, waking everybody up from their sleep. The slumber that they had, that it didn't matter that there was a small camp, a very small camp that was Imam Hussein and his followers. And surrounding them was all of this evil. People who were tyrants, people who were on that path away from the holy Al-Bayt, who had chosen that path because Allah gives us that free will, out of their greed because they wanted worldly gain. And then we see that people in that camp of Imam Hussein are the ones that are the lovers of the holy Al-Bayt. They want to stay with Imam Hussein no matter what. They want to give up their lives defending Islam and making sure that the goodness that Allah has put in our hearts, that goodness that exists in the world today, remains in this world, and people are guided every day of their lives. So we see that Ali Akbar alayhi salam, on the day of Ashura, he goes to seek permission from his father. "Oh father, may I go to the battlefield?" And this is after everybody has been killed. Muhammad have been killed. Qasim has been killed, and so has Abbas. Abbas sleeps now by Nahr Furat. And here is Ali Akbar standing in front of his father. And his father loved him so very much because whenever he saw him, he was reminded of his grandfather, the Prophet of Islam, because Ali Akbar looked just like his grandfather. The way he walked, the way he talked, the way he spoke. It was the Prophet himself. It was like it was the Prophet himself. And Imam Mazlum, Imam Hussain loved him so very much. There was once in Medina, there was a man who came to Imam Hussain and he said, oh Imam, tell me, what is the worst thing for a father to see? What is the worst thing for a man to see? And Imam Hussain told him that it is the death of his son. And he said, what is the most pleasant sight for a man? And Imam Hussain said, when your young son walks in front of you, that is the most pleasing sight. And I am so happy when I see my Ali Akbar walking around. It reminds me of my grandfather. So this is a son that the Imam loves so very much. And when he stands there in front of the Imam, our Imam Hussain stares at him for the longest time, gazes on his beautiful face, that honorable, noble face, and then he says, Ali Akbar, go and seek permission from your mother and your aunt and the rest of the ladies. They are waiting for you. And then Ali Asghar, when you go towards the battlefield, my son, when you're on that horseback, keep looking back because I want to see your face for the longest time possible. Ali Akbar goes to his mother and his aunt. And it is written that when Ali Akbar was leaving the Khaimegah, and my dear friends, I have to say, Khaimegah is the place I go and visit whenever I'm in Karbala. That's the place I go and stay the most time because I think this is where the Holy Ahl Bayt were in Karbala. They were in the Khaimegah most of the time. So I want to be there. It is written that the curtain of Khaimegah kept lifting and falling back as Ali Akbar would leave. His family would pull him back in, saying, one last gaze at your face, Ali Akbar. Let's look at your face again. Because they knew that Ali Akbar would not come back from the battlefield in that same condition. So Ali Akbar then gets ready to leave, and as he's riding away, he looks back and sees his father. Following him, he says, oh father, why are you following me? Oh father, please go back. I promise I'll be back. And Imam Hussain says, oh Ali Akbar, if only you knew the love of a father for his son, for his children. And we know that Ali Akbar is never going to be a father. He's never going to have children of his own. Ali Akbar says, oh father, I'll come back to the Khaimegah again. He goes and fights. In the beginning, it's one-on-one combat, which is what the tradition was in those days, is one-on-one combat. And as he's fighting the most famous warriors, fighting with 3 days of hunger and thirst, Imam Hussain is there with Layla, his mother, and saying, Layla, pray for Ali Akbar. Pray that he come back to us. And he is there fighting the battle bravely, and he comes back to us. And Layla prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, oh Allah, please send back my Ali Akbar. Send back my Ali Akbar one last time. I want to see him again. Ali Akbar comes back and says, oh father, if only I had one drop of water. And Ali Akbar is wounded from head to toe. And Imam Hussain says, oh Ali Akbar, at Hawz-e Kausar, I promise I will give you that cup of Kausar. Go back to the battlefield, my son. Ali Akbar goes back to the battlefield, and this time he's surrounded from all sides. There are bands of 1,000 soldiers who surround him, raining down arrows and swords come raining down at him. There is one arrow that crosses his chest. And as he's pulling that out, he is hit with a sword. He falls down from that horse, calling out to his father, oh father, come and help me. Imam Hussain runs towards the battlefield where Ali Akbar has fallen. We do not know, narrations do not tell us how, in what condition did Imam Hussain reach the body of Ali Akbar. Only that land of Karbala can tell us how did Imam Hussain reach Ali Akbar. But when he sat there by the side of Ali Akbar, he saw that Ali Akbar had his eyes closed and he was bleeding profusely. He said, my son, open your eyes, my son. Talk to me, my son. One last time, Ali Akbar. Open your eyes, Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar opened his eyes and he said, oh father, Oh Father, this arrow is hurting me terribly that is embedded in my chest. Imam Hussein could see the blunt end of the arrow sticking out. As he pulled that arrow out, Ali Akbar breathed his last and said farewell to his father. How did Imam Hussein take that body back to the Khimega? Nobody knows. But narrations tell us that the children of the Holy Alibet came running from that Khimega towards where Ali Akbar was, and together they carried the body of Ali Akbar back to the Khimega, where the ladies and everybody grieved over Ali Akbar. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Allah lanatullahi ala khamis zalimin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.